Hey, what's up, everyone? Today we will be debating Sinthe from, Sinthe's channel. He's a small YouTuber who wants me to call him on Discord, and I guess we were going to have our discourse on, Discord. I just realized, though, that there's probably going to be a bit of an echo if I call him on Discord because I don't have my headphones, and I don't want my computer reverberating the noise coming from my stereo. So trying to think. I don't know where I put my headphones at. I don't know where they're at. So I'm not gonna worry about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go and give him a call, or actually I'm gonna message him and I'm gonna ask. Yeah, looks like he's ready. And we are calling. Hey.
How's it going, bud? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear you. Before we get started, I want to make sure there's no reverb. Normally I plug in my headphones into my computer stereo so that you don't hear an echo, because it can be extremely distracting when we're trying to talk, so.
Sure. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Yeah, do you
I don't hear any echo on my end.
Okay, so you don't hear any reverb?
Nope.
All right.
I've got headphones on, so you can hear anything on my end.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Oh, really quick, can you send me a link to the stream?
The stream? Yes, one moment. I will get it on YouTube. Getting it on YouTube.
Oh, really quick, can you send me a link to the stream?
Oop, there you are now. All right, there you go. I probably should have grabbed some water. Is it cool if I grab some water real quick before we get started?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
All right, how's it going, fellow traveler stream? I'm Sinthe. I'm at youtube.com/SINTHE. My fellow traveler is a Marxist-Leninist. That's what we're going to be debating about today. I'm a market socialist. I know recently, I believe, fellow traveler had a debate with another market socialist, like the Bosch guy. I think that for a little bit there, fellow traveler seemed like he was doing not too bad, but obviously it fell through at the end. Bosch is he's a tricky guy. I've had debates with him myself. So if you want to check mine out, it's in my stream VOD section on my channel. We talked about censorship. Let me open up your this stream over here. Mute this tab. There we go. Hello, Mr. Sinthe. Nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Ed.
All right. I'm back. I am back in black, and my dog's in the room. All right, so I just want to start by saying that it's a pleasure that you're doing this with me, and I want to try and maintain kind of a good faith discussion / debate throughout of this, because after the shit show that was the Bosch debate, I feel like it would be a really useless and unproductive conversation if it just evolved into that. So I don't know. I just want you to know I'm coming in completely good faith, and I'm open to criticism and all that other jazz, and it is what it is. But hey, so I know we were going to start with opening statements, right?
Sure. I don't really need mine. You can go ahead and do yours if you want.
Oh, I didn't do one either. I've actually been spending my entire day preparing a Word document about some of the topics that I'd like to discuss, and it's mainly just some of my arguments against market socialism in general. But before I get to that, do you want to give like a summary, of your vision? Because you said you were a market socialist, right? Yeah. So do you think you could give a summary of like your political theory and beliefs and so on?
Sure. All of my political theory breaks down into the sort of normative ethical theory that I subscribe to. The thing I'm rolling around with calling it at the moment is just truth utilitarianism. The idea being that it's a form of utilitarian where the thing you're maximizing is the degree to which the ideas in people's heads models the world around them, which sounds like nerd stuff. Basically, what that means is just I'm trying to make people's views of the world as accurate as possible. That's what I think the end goal of morality is. I think that everything else is an abstraction of that. Keeping people alive, for example, means that they're able to live for longer, so they can learn more about the world, right? But all of my political theory breaks down to just what the empirical evidence says what the empirical evidence says does that thing that I want to do, right?
Right. So when it comes to, I guess, reform versus revolution, what would you say is your more preferred path? Are you like a reformist, or you want to like, do revolution, or is there like somewhere in between that you're feeling? Just curious.
So I think the issue with this question is like, no matter what you are, the answer you should give is always reformist. The answer I'm going to give is reformist.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Even if you were like internally, if you were a staunch revolutionary, if you actually want to win, what you should be saying out loud is that you're a reformist.
Yeah.
The optics of that are so much easier to dance around with.
True. I'm a reformist in the short term. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I want to, overthrow the fucking government in a video game. But in the short term, yeah, I would say I'm with you there. Yeah, so on market socialism, I have a number of criticisms of market socialism itself. And I was wondering if you would be open to addressing these.
Sure.
All right. So my four criticisms, or my four main points of contingency, come down to this. The first one is that market socialism isn't really socialism. The second is, because there's a market and this market is in command of economic decision making, there will still be inequality, unemployment, and exploitations and other problems like that. The third one is cooperative ownership of the means of production in and of itself does not inherently address the inherent contradictions to a market economy. And the last one is resolution on the ecological crisis on the scale of what is actually needed will never occur within the market due to its structural limitations. So those are the four. I know it's a lot, so we can just go point by point if you want.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me try to address all of these in like a short batch, and we can get into like the meat of whichever one you want to choose here.
Sure.
First, starting out with not really socialism. This is when I really heavily refute the two ideas that we have about like what socialism really is. Right? Are like it's either going to come from like people's colloquial definition of what socialism is, in which case it's just like that's just social democracy. That's not something that either of us consider very extreme. Or the other alternative is, instead of it being the colloquial definition, it's like the historic definition. And when we trace it back, like the earliest example we have of socialists as like a broad movement are, at least in the English language, is cooperativists, right? Is people like Robert Owen, who like what they were pushing for was just like the establishment of more worker cooperatives. And even though Robert Owen in particular was kind of a fan of voluntarily starting his own communes, the majority of his works is in like the cooperative sector, right?
Yeah, he did more than advocate for that, didn't he? He ran his own commune for a while, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was pretty like Owensville was actually a pretty prosperous place. Yeah.
He also founded a lot of worker cooperatives as well.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he was excommunicated from Ireland for his works. But anywho, what else did you have?
Yeah, so that would be the long and short of why I think that it is really socialism. And if we want to communicate, right, we have to use definitions of words that communicate.
Oh, all right.
Socialism is a fine way to describe socialism.
Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and, if you'd like, I can describe my definition, which is really just the Marxian definition of the term.
I'm familiar with the Marxian definition of the term, but the issue with the issue with like saying X isn't really socialism because my specific definition excludes it, right? The dictatorship of the proletariat wouldn't really be socialism, and your definition would probably exclude that too. Like if you're using the Marxist definition of the term socialism.
Well, yeah, because socialism is a political mode, or it's an economic mode. It's also a form of political governance, but it's political economy together. The reason
it's
why
a societal mode of production.
Yeah. The reason why I go with the Marxian definition of the term is really just because I'm an advocate for what I consider scientific socialism, and that's basically where Marxism comes in. So my definition, if you'd like to hear my definition of socialism, is pretty similar to yours: a society, form of common ownership of the means of production, but it operates according to a plan, and it's basically working towards the abolition of commodity production, and distribution according to need. The point is to get to a point to where there's no human labor involvement in production at all, and we can just distribute resources according to need, and people are just free to do whatever they want with their time.
Sure. So this could be the definition you use for socialism, but when you're saying like a refutation you have of market socialism is that it's not really socialism, and then like all of like the most reasonable possible definitions for communicating with others, both the historic one, right, and the modern definition of the term that people colloquially use, would both include this. And it's like it's not really like a decent reputation, right? Because it's still like accurate to call it like market socialism. That's to communicate the idea to most people.
Yeah, you could also call it You could also call it co-op capitalism by that same token, couldn't you?
Oh, you couldn't, because most people wouldn't really consider it capitalist. Most people would like highly reject the idea that this is capitalist. The conception of capitalism in most people's minds is not just having a market, right?
Yeah, it's private ownership of the means of production, but there's a very unique characteristic to capitalism as a historical phenomenon known as generalized commodity production, which is large-scale systematic production of commodities or use values in pursuit of exchange value, basically. There's still that in market socialism.
So I agree that under like the Marxist definition of socialism, market socialism wouldn't be socialism, but most people aren't using the Marxist definition, which is the issue, right? So I don't want to like go in circles here, but the average person is either going to use like the colloquial definition, or like the other definition that you could appeal to is some kind of like definition based on etymology, in which case I would still be like a socialist, right? So like either of these two routes, like the two horns you can go down, both of them would make me a socialist still, right?
Yeah.
So that's just why we could talk about like I know like three other things we talk about.
Yeah. All right. Sure. We can talk about the other things. That's fine. Point number two was because there's still a market, and this market is in command of economic decision making. There will still be inequality and exploitation, and you cannot guarantee full employment within such a context. And I have an interesting article if you'd be interested in looking at it with me. Or not an article, but it's a PDF. It's really short.
Yeah, if you'd like to send that over. Yeah, to address this though, so we could use controls to like reduce level of inequality. I don't think that we ought to, like currently, before we get to like post scarcity or anything, be reducing the inequality in society to zero. I think it's like that's a bad goal.
No.
I think some amount of inequality in the short term will let us in like the long term create a better world for everyone as a whole.
Yeah. So I'm
with the unemployment question, I do think that like it doesn't matter that somebody doesn't necessarily have a job as long as they have like the ability to do things, right? So if somebody's basic needs are met, and they also have the ability to have like to do something that gains them those like luxury goods, them having like wage labor or some kind of like labor that pays them some kind of like luxury or whatever, I don't think is super important. I think employment is like if there's a use in employment because it makes you feel like you have some kind of purpose, something to do, right? But you can have that without employment as well. So I think that as long as people's basic needs are met, I don't think unemployment is really like an issue. I think it's an issue under our current society because if you're unemployed, you starve to death under the current system.
But within the context of a co-op economy, I mean, so wait, let me get this straight. So you are in favor. So what is this, like basic provisions? Like you're providing people with basic provisions? Because when I think of market socialism, I'm thinking that because of the propensity towards wealth to consolidate, you're going to end up in a situation where you can't guarantee full employment. And if you still have a system of wage labor where people have to work a job in order to pay their bills, then that's a problem, isn't it?
No, I don't want a system where people still have to work a job. But even like a social democrat is okay with like even like a lot of like Austrian weirdos are okay with some kind of like UBI, right? I do want people's basic needs met. I want this to be like not shackled to like some kind of job they do. I want their basic needs to be met like no matter what. I don't think the average person who's not like who's on the street without their basic needs met, I don't think this person is like out there because of the fact that they're like they're too lazy to work or something. I think the reason they're out there is because of the fact that there's like there's something that they're like not capable of, right? So it's usually like some kind of mental illness can be a huge one for a lot of people. Addiction is another one that can be like devastating. But some people are just out there on the streets because they just don't have a job, right? They just don't have the money to. And it's like they would rather have a job and have that money. They just don't have the opportunity, right? So I would hope that that we could still give everyone like their basic needs met. And this seems like empirically the data does seem to show this, right?
What with like UBI?
If you give people their basic needs met.
So instead of a universal basic income, it's more of a universal services, right?
It would be like, I would want universal food stamps for everyone, no matter what. I'd also want like a universal basic income that would be like some amount. I want like universal housing, right? Every basic need that you could think of, I would want that to be met, and I would want them to have like some amount of like just a bit to have some kind of luxury, right?
Right.
Because I think it's good for your mental health. It's still part of your needs, right?
All right. So that's great and all, but the problem within the context of an economy where profits are in command, it's still whether or not you're able to provide those things is still largely contingent on the profitability of the private, or I should say, cooperative sector. So the general health of the economy, which still largely is driven by the growth ethic, is still contingent on that in order to provide tax revenue to provide those human services. So, I mean, there is propensity for like a kind of austerity to be imposed because, I mean, I'm assuming people like within a cooperative economy, they're just, instead of it being a minority of like shareholders, everyone's a shareholder in the company. I just feel like within the context of that, you would have a pressure for people to just come to the same decisions democratically as private firms would be coming to autocratically. Does that make sense?
So this is actually something I've heard. I've heard two groups of people giving this argument. A lot of them are like Marxist-Leninists or like Marxists in general will give me this argument, and also on the other end of the spectrum is like Austrians give me this kind of like the same argument, but like with the reverse implication, right? I don't think it's true when either of these groups makes it. I think that the actual case of the matter is like the average person is empathetic. The average person feels bad when other people are like in like poor conditions. We can look at empirical data. Even a rich person who is like sees homeless people, right, will feel bad about the homeless people being there. And the inverse doesn't apply though, right? Like a poor person who sees a rich person walking around doesn't feel bad. They might feel like mildly bad about how like their conditions are, right? But they're not gonna feel like it's not gonna like give them the same kind of feeling that like when a rich person sees a homeless person they get, right? And it is a feeling of empathy. You like even if you were self-interested and your only goal was just to make yourself feel better, you would still want these people to be in better conditions because it would make you feel better for having done so, right? So I think democratically, the average person, they want like everyone to have your basic needs met, right? It would make them feel bad for anything else to be the case.
Right.
I think in the case of capitalism, the system we have is like the way it works is less a matter of like democratic decision making. It's not even like democratic among the shareholders. It's more like it's really, really, really made automatic, right? Each and every step along the way, somebody has like a very explicit goal that they're given. Either you do this or you get fired, right? Whereas for like a democratic group of people making those same decisions as a whole, it's like you're not going to make the decision to fire yourself because of the fact that you did something empathetic. Like that's not going to happen. So structurally, they think they work very differently.
Right. So on screen, I have the that document open, or not the document, but the PDF by Yakovenko, and
Sure.
This is like one of the next things I wanted to address. So basically, it's about the Gibbs-Boltzmann distribution and about how there's a relationship or a very interesting mirror that you'll see between when you look at a closed system with particles and like say a gas tank, and the more you add energy to that system, and as collisions occur between different particles within it, there's a propensity for some particles to consolidate more energy. So you end up with a distribution where there's a small amount of particles with a great deal of energy conserved, and a vast majority of them where there's not as much energy. You find a similar trend within like markets, basically, where that is to say, where you have a minority of firms, like because within each exchange, energy is conserved or money is conserved, and because of the propensity towards unequal exchange, you eventually end up with a point to where you'll have a small minority with lots and lots of money, and then a vast majority with not nearly as much money. All right, and the relation is very similar. So because within the context of like a cooperative market economy, the issue that I wanted to bring up was that if you left it unchecked, like if you just let this system run its course, you would eventually end up in a situation where you have a minority of co-ops that are very, very wealthy. You would have like a labor aristocracy of sorts, and then you'd have a bunch of other co-ops that are just going bankrupt or just breaking even. And do you see what I'm saying here?
I do, but I see a huge issue with it. It seems like you're sort of presupposing the idea of like the descriptive egoist position, right?
Descriptive egoist, whatever do you mean?
Yeah, it seems like you're saying that people are acting within their self-interest. So for this to be true, it would have to be the case that people are trying to act in their self-interest, right?
Yeah, people always.
What we see is
oh, sorry, go on.
systems act in a way generally that perpetuates those systems. So a system of like capitalism would try to perpetuate itself, right? But individuals don't act rationally at all. People are like remarkably irrational. So in the case of like a democratically owned organization, what they're probably going to do is not going to be like what amasses in the most wealth. And we actually see this in the real world. And worker cooperatives, they are remarkably less unequal, or more equal, I should say, than the alternatives, which are like the privately owned capitalist corporations. We actually see like empirically in the real world, like the mathematical models are like, don't get me wrong. Like I think it's important to mathematically model the economy, but at the end of the day, if the mathematical models can the actual empirical data of the world, economics has to be like the science and not
So I just want to say you are correct. Within the context of a co-op economy, the worst pay gap between the poorest and highest earners would be more like a 10-to-1 ratio, rather than like an 1,000-to-1 ratio, right? So, but this kind of brings up another issue. One second. This is the Mondragon Corporation. That was what I was going to. What's up?
I think it's an important question to ask. Do you think that it would be an issue to have any amount of inequality?
Because we aren't advanced enough to where it doesn't matter anymore. You do have to have some degree of inequality within a socialist economy. In regards to just certain fields of labor are in greater demand. There's certain labor that's extremely arduous and certain jobs that people just simply don't want to do. So you would have to have some degree of inequality or pay differential to account for that and, encourage people to go in those fields. Ideally, you should find other ways to do it, to encourage people to work where we need them to work. But yeah, you would have to have some degree of inequality. How much that is, I don't know. Historic example would be like, say, the USSR, like during the Brezhnev years. The worst pay gap was like a 3-to-1 ratio between the highest and lowest earners. So I would say something like that. Like a 3-to-1 ratio, a 4-to-1 ratio is probably fair. What do you think?
Do you think there's any inherent immorality to inequality? Do you think there's like some aspect of it itself that's like in and of itself like inequality is an issue, or do you think it's just a matter of like inequality leads to things which are issues, like instability, for example, would be a great example. So do you think it's like or do you think it's like axiomatic there's a problem with it?
I do think there are issues with inequality to an extent, but at the same time, I acknowledge that people they're not equal in their talents and their skills. We're all individuals. We all have our different abilities and so on. So as long as people are not equal in that way, they aren't going to be materially equal. And it's unfair if you've got, a coal miner over here who's busting his ass, like working 80 hours a week in a coal mine versus like an accountant behind a desk. It's not really fair to the coal miner to, pay him the exact same as you see what I'm saying? So I understand like there's...
I'm not actually sure what you're saying. Why do you think it would not be fair to pay them the same wage?
Largely just because there's just so much more effort and time and energy that's going into it. I mean, the time is one factor, but it's really just the effort more than anything else. I'm not saying we don't need like attendants like behind counters like secretaries, but like you're not going to catch lung cancer and break your back behind a counter. I'm just trying to say,
Well, I agree that you're not going to break your back or get lung cancer behind a counter, right? But I'm not sure that somebody deserves more payment because of that. I'm not sure why you think they do.
It's largely on an effort. It's largely on an effort basis more than anything else. I don't know. I mean, hopefully in the future we won't even.
You say it's on. That's the issue though. It's like you say it's on an effort basis. I'm just not sure why. I'm asking you, like, why is it on an effort basis?
Well, I don't want to sound dishonest, but why do you not think it should be?
Well, the issue with that is it does sound dishonest because you're not answering the question, right? Like I could give you my answer, right? Which is I think there's a general trend of inequality being a problem, but I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with inequality, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with paying everyone the exact same thing either. I think we should do what produces the best results.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think the best results include any kind of measurement of if things are equal or unequal. And so I'm not sure why you think like the guy who does more effort should get paid more.
Because they're more productive largely, and it's not just like a morality type thing. It's more like when it comes to like the general economic plan, like because you want to account for more productive workers within an economy when you're deciding labor inputs and outputs, because I'm an advocate, just to let you know, I'm an advocate of doing economic calculation in kind or according to labor times and labor inputs. So I think, I mean, I guess it's like a contradiction. It's like, I would refer to as, I mean, Marxists refer to as bourgeois right. So it is kind of a contradiction, but hopefully down the future it won't really matter anymore, because we'll become so productive that like people won't need to put time into the economy, or they won't need to put nearly as much time into the economy in order to get outputs back. Does that make sense?
So you said it's not just a moral thing, but I'm guessing you're implying to some degree it is a moral thing. I'm kind of curious of like why it's a moral thing.
Honestly, just because I don't feel like it's not really fair to the person who's putting forth the extra mile, the extra effort, that they get paid. Because then what's the incentive to strive? You know, what's the incentive to work harder if you're just going to get paid the same as everybody else? You know. So
you could still have the incentive to work hard while still having like the maximum amount that you're able to get paid is the same as other people's, right? So like the person who's working at a coal mine could still get paid the same as somebody who works at a desk. And you can still have like incentive for their jobs. You also mentioned you think people should get paid more because they're more productive. But do you really hold to that?
Well, it's according to like labor outputs. Like if let's say you have an average labor output of 100, and you have someone who shows to work who's really enthusiastic who does 110. You know.
So what if somebody has like depression or something, like they can't get to work? Like for this group of people, they're like going to be way less productive, right? But they should get paid less, right?
Well, I mean, there shouldn't be any shame associated with not working as hard, because honestly, some people just prefer a more relaxed pace. So I think there should be like a certain minimum. But if someone has like a mental illness, then they shouldn't be going to work. They should be going to a hospital for treatment, you know?
Well, they're not going to be at a hospital 24/7, right?
Yeah, no, of course not.
Yeah, but in this group of people, you wouldn't want them to get paid less, right? You'd want them to get paid like the same amount, even if they're only able to work like a bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say somebody they're like able to do like 10% of the productivity of somebody else, right? Like this person is like, this is just what they're capable of. This isn't like because of like they're like a bad person or anything. They're just like not capable of doing as much, right?
Well, at that point, it sounds to me like you've got someone who's got a disability. So there should be should be like a common fund for someone like that. Because if you have someone that's like practically incapable of doing the job, then you may as well give them like a pension, like if it's an old person or someone who's like physically or differently abled, you know?
Yeah, so people shouldn't get paid more because they're more productive, right?
Why not?
Because you just said they shouldn't. You just agreed with that.
Well, no, what I said was...
There should be a person who's way less productive and they're getting paid. They're still getting paid, right? They're just getting paid the same amount.
Well, not exactly the same. They'd probably be... You got me there. Well, let me reify the other reason why I'm in favor of this. Actually, let me think about this. Because if you have...
Feel free to take your time, but you don't have to like rush into a response or anything. I'm not trying to gotcha you.
Yeah, well... No, but in all seriousness, though, if you have a group of people that are exceptionally productive, you will want to take that into account for like the economic plan, because that way you don't, I guess, end up with... Well, if they're extra productive, then, I don't know, you just turned this into a very interesting conversation, because I haven't thought about this part of it that deeply before. But for now, I don't know, I'd have to think about that and get back to you on that, to be honest, because you actually gave me some interesting stuff to think about.
All right, we can talk about other things you brought up initially that we didn't get a chance to delve into.
I wanted to talk about how cooperatives can actually still exploit and extract profits, because okay, so let's say you outlaw wage labor, right? Because wage labor is how surplus value is extracted and so on. Like, let's say you do away with that. Cooperatives are jointly owned. Couple examples of how you could get unequal exchange. You have rents and dividends, or intellectual property. Let's say you have a co-op that has like an IP to a really sweet product or whatever.
Really quick. So if this is like an analogy that will work on other things, then feel free to continue. But I'm not in favor of intellectual property at all.
Are you in favor of rents or dividends? Or
I'm very not in favor of rent either. No.
Or how about outsourcing? Are you in favor? Because if you say no to the rest of these, then you're you are a much more based person than I originally thought.
So if you're by outsourcing, you're saying like getting another cooperative and like having them do work, or are you saying like finding some individual contractor and having them do work?
Well, I'm referring to, like, say, a richer cooperative exploiting a poorer, smaller cooperative by outsourcing the labor and paying these guys less paying these guys less than what they're worth, and then using that surplus value to enrich the members of the larger co-op is what I'm talking about.
So at this point, it's like if everybody formed their own co-op, like if I was okay with this, we just have the same thing we have now, right? We just have like everyone's an individual contractor, and like your one person co-op is now paying a bunch of other people, right? Like this is just the same structurally as capitalism is.
Yes, I mean sort of. But what I'm referring,
with the exception of you can't have shareholders, right? Like that would be the one exception. But like the CEO can still exist effectively.
All right,
cool. That person could own the entirety of the actual company's assets, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, I wouldn't be anywhere near okay with this. I think that what we have to do is we have to have checks and balances in place to make sure these like the smaller cooperatives have negotiating power with the larger ones. I think the best way to do this is by having like, but not only having worker cooperatives, but also having like producer cooperatives who can like build up as like one big, like effectively a union of cooperatives, right? A producer cooperative. And then they can use their leverage as a group over this the larger one, who would otherwise just be able to like to smash them flat, right? With the sheer size they have, like the economy of scale that they have over the other one.
You could probably call it a union of cooperative socialist republics, even.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, because if you disagreed, I'm going to be real with you. I've been prepping a doc for this because I didn't know which direction this conversation was going to go. But I was actually going to talk about the Mondragon Corporation and some of their activities. Like, are you familiar with Mondragon?
I am. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, but
yeah,
it's cool that we have an example of a very large worker cooperative that we can grab data from, and data on like how worker cooperatives actually function at that size. But I think there are huge issues with the federated model we use.
Right. Yeah. Now, the issue with Mondragon is that about a third of their workforce, like, remember when I was talking about contracting out or outsourcing work? Well, Mondragon does that with like a third of its workforce. They have like these contract workers that they'll pay like a fraction of the wages and benefits out, and then they'll just take the surplus value from the contracted labor and then use it to enrich the official members of the company. And they engage in some pretty shady, like kind of shitty business practices. And I don't really think that's right. But at the same time, like they're doing it because we live in the context of capitalism and they got to compete, right? So so they're gonna feel compelled to like do shit like that. And
that's sort of like one of the catch-22s, right? Yeah. Like living in the real world and like wanting to make it a better place is like occasionally you will have like if you hold really, really strong to like a huge set of like hardline rules, then what you end up doing is like your side ends up losing. So the best thing to do is usually like to have one central goal you have in mind and to focus all your energy on doing like no matter what it takes, making sure that goal is met. It's sort of like one of the strengths of like a utilitarian system over like a deontological one, right? Yeah. Like the maximizing this, like you want to take this like one number and make it go up. Like for me, it's just truth. For like other people, it's like it's happiness or whatever. And you do what you can do to make that happen. You have a lot more calculation to do, but you have a much more winnable game. Like a deontologist who is like they have like a huge set of these like true or false rules. Like these are all of these huge array of things you're not allowed to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the strengths of like a utilitarian system. That's kind of a tangent. But
I like this. I'm enjoying this. But so it honestly, dude, now that you mentioned that, as well as providing great basic provisions and all the other stuff that you have, like in all honesty, you're sounding more like a standard socialist to me than you are like just a market socialist. Because I've talked to Titoists and like, you know, I've brought stuff up like that, and they don't even take that into account, you know.
They call themselves Titoists, and they wouldn't think that. That's strange.
Yeah, like I've talked to Titoists before, a couple in the past, but and I was actually going to talk about some of the issues in Tito's Yugoslavia, but I'm just going to pass right over that because, I mean, you know, anyways.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Tito's Yugoslavia is like. So most market socialists, I feel like if they've really delved into like the research on this, they probably wouldn't consider Tito's Yugoslavia to be a market socialist society. Like they did have like a market for consumer goods, right? But like everything up the chain is like it's not as planned, right? It's all planned again. So like maybe maybe the Hungarian like NEM. I haven't delved super deep into that, but that might be an actual example of market socialism. I'm not quite sure.
Right. Yeah. So this is the reason my main contingency with markets in general is like because of that propensity towards like that like the Gitz-Boltzmann distribution that I was talking about, and because it's an observable phenomenon in the real world. The main way that I know of that you would combat something like that is if you had an economy where profits weren't even in command in the first place, where the goal wasn't like private enrichment, but rather just meeting human need in a sustainable manner. I mean, is that a reasonable assumption to make?
So, if you, I'll have to ask your question again, because I don't think I really caught the meat of it.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and repeat. So remember when I showed you that chart earlier of the Gitz-Boltzmann distribution? All right. So that is an observable phenomenon in the real world. We see within capitalist economies that income inequality is a growing trend, and it's because of the way, it's the way unequal exchange works and the way that wealth is like transferred in every transaction between entities. And it's just a natural outcome and outgrowth of the capitalist system. Well, in order to combat something like that, you would need an economic system where the goal isn't private enrichments. In other words, profits are not in command. And it sounds to me like you're the type of person that does not want a society where profits are in command, right?
So I'm okay with using profits as a tool to meet some other goal,
right?
Goal is absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's not like profits in command. I'm curious, I hope that answers the question.
No, that's a great. Honestly, like I said, you're just sounding more and more like a regular socialist to me. But yeah.
So I kind of want to turn the question on you and ask you, what do you think the goal of organizing the economy is?
All right, so I am an advocate of a planned economy, as you know, and ideally it should be as democratically planned as humanly possible. I'm talking radical democracy. Wherever you can have direct voting initiatives on issues like, yo, guys, you want to build this bridge over there? You want to make these vertical crop towers? I think people should just be allowed to vote on it, and then we check our resource balance and check our eco balance and be like, yo, do we have what we need to do this? Okay, we have a shortage of this, and that. We got to take that into account, and people come together and collaboratively plan on a local level. But whenever it comes to because I know you can't just do away with bureaucracy and hierarchy altogether. You're going to need some sort of administration, at least in the earlier stages of this project. You would have bureaucrats and you would have planners, like state planners, professionals, right? But that's not entirely answering your question. The answer is that I'm an advocate of a society. The plan should be to meet human need in a sustainable manner, as well as, providing an outlet for consumer goods there, little light industry. That way people can have their fidget spinners and their Warhammer figurines, while at the same time meeting a balanced load with our earthly habitat, because it's the only planet we have. We got to take care of it.
Well, I don't disagree that we should be sustainable. We could do an ecology talk as soon as we the actual root of this and move to that. I think it's a good next subject. But when it comes to the goal is to meet human need in a sustainable manner. Plus, you said having some amount of light industry. What do you think the point of that is?
Well, because people tend to take for granted, and you actually saw this within historically existing socialist projects, but after a certain point, people tend to take for granted their basic provisions. Once your needs are met, your wants tend to become an issue. And I think there should be outlets, if people want to have toys or video games or whatever, there should be an outlet for that, because entertainment, because people need entertainment. It is a need. I mean, quote unquote need.
For using Maslow's hierarchy. You need more than just food and water, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of a shortcoming of historically existing socialism or socialist projects, is that they met human need. They provided people with basic economic security. That was a positive, but where they were missing was the light industry or people's wants. They saw what the West had and they thought they could have what the West have, disregarding what they already had. You see what I'm saying? They wanted that consumerist economy, but because of a lot of contradictions I don't care to get into. I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but that's basically what I'm trying to say. There's an outlet, and there is that hierarchy of needs that you just mentioned that needs to be addressed.
So for you, the point of this is just like, I'm not sure if I really caught it there. It's just like stability to like continue preserving the existing system.
Well,
or the system that will exist once you establish your like this system you want, right?
Yeah,
continue preserving that. You want the light industry on top of it, so that people
yeah.
don't like. Okay.
Yeah, well, the ultimate goal is communism. The ultimate goal is a stateless, classless, moneyless society where humans are no longer a product of their environment. They're instead its master, and the governance of people is subjugated and replaced by the administration of things. And people just manage the economy in the same way they clean their house and brush their teeth every single day. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what, like, for you, what is the point of that, right? Like, there's obviously like an end goal for every the construction of any economic system is like the end goal. For like Western like neoliberal ones, it's like they justify it with this idea of property right? Like they're like the ability to have your cake and not have somebody else eat it, right?
Right.
And it's like they extend this out from like your own personal self ownership. I'm just sort of like wondering, like, with your system, what kind of like justifying sort of like framework underlies that, right? Like, what do you think the justification is for us being like communist as opposed to anything else, or what do you think like the point is of meeting human need?
The point of meeting human need. Well, if you want me to rule out the morality of it, honestly,
no. I don't want you to rule out the morality of it. I want you to talk about like why you think this is moral.
Oh, I believe it's moral because we have a limited time that we are here. And when I look at the human animal, I see peak entropy. I see the most advanced and evolved creature that the universe has ever created that we can, observe. Like within the observable universe, the human ape is capable of endless potential. There are many great things that people can achieve and many great things that we can do with our lives and, realization. Not a lot of people actually do get to that point where they fulfill that. And I think it would be preferable for all of us, because we would all be wealthier and we would all be prosperous and better off if everybody was uplifted and given a chance to be the best that they can be in life. Because by helping other people out, it comes back to help me in the end as well. Self-interest manifests as social interest. So
for you, it boils down to your own self-interest. If you do what maximizes your own sort of like preferences.
Yeah, and it's
socialism does that.
Yeah, but there's a dual nature of it. Yeah, it is self-interest, but it's also social interest. It's caring about others, caring about myself.
Well, you said the social interest stems from the self-interest.
Yeah, exactly.
So it all boils down to the self-interest. Then.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, pretty much. But are you familiar with a book by Richard Dawkins called The Selfish Gene?
Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting book. He talks about the psychology about this with self-interest as social interest. It's some good stuff. I haven't read it in a while, but it's kind of related. Yeah.
Have you heard of Hume's guillotine?
Have I heard of who?
Hume's guillotine.
No, I haven't, but I'm going to look that up right now. How do I spell it?
The idea is like the idea is effectively like when you say something is the case, that doesn't necessarily mean like no matter what it is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it ought to be the case, right?
Right.
So if what you're pointing at is like humans genetically, we are predisposed to like our own self-interest. That doesn't necessarily mean that like we ought to be predisposed to our self-interest, right?
Yeah.
So we should be doing that. So there are a lot of things about humans that are like the natural way we are, but they're like heinous and immoral.
Right. Well, yeah. I want to harness the most positive aspects of humanity while suppressing and like environmentally engineering out the most negative aspects of humanity. And the way that I see that we can do this is if people take destiny in their own hands and we have a democratically planned system that works towards the common benefit of all human beings so that we can all prosper and we can all, get through this life with the best outcomes possible, because that's the goal of a society, isn't it? I mean, we live in a society, don't we?
Well, I'm not sure that is the goal of society, is to make sure that people are as like
not right.
As possible.
Yeah, not right now. It's not right now, but it ought to be. So that's what I'm working towards.
I'm not. Yeah, well, the issue is I'm not actually sure it ought to be. So you could see a society that's as prosperous as possible, but it's still like immoral in other ways that you wouldn't be okay with.
Yeah.
So the goal probably isn't just like as prosperous as possible. It's more like there's a huge range of goals, and being prosperous helps us to achieve those other ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's always going to be contradictions and there's always going to be shortcomings in any social system. Whenever you resolve, like this is some dialectics right here. Whenever you resolve an issue, you have your thesis and antithesis, you'll get your resolutions to that, but then new contradictions will come and then you'll have conflict and then resolution. I mean, communism isn't like the very end of history. It's just the next step in our social evolution, basically. And I don't know what comes after communism. I haven't read that far into the canon.
I'm not sure there are many like Hegelians who would say that there's like the internal contradictions of communism will resolve into something else. But I'm sure there might be some.
Yeah, I'm referring more to Marx and Engels' philosophy of dialectical materialism. Yeah, and basically, something society is driven forward by class struggle, and that the contradictions inherent to each social system will give rise to the conditions for the next social system. Basically, I don't know if you've seen the basic chart where you've got clan society, and then it goes from slave society, then feudalism, and then capitalism. Like sort of like.
Oh yeah, now I've seen the mode of production. Like
the mode. Yeah, I mean, I don't think human history is that simplistic, but it's a general basic model of like how we've progressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned ecology, right?
Yeah. Want to talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So when it comes to like the current way that humans, the way that humans use our sort of like our factors of production, it seems like the biggest issue with the existing ones is not a matter of like some inherent contradiction of capitalism. It seems like the issue is there's just aspects of like the existing like profit motive that we have in the U.S. is really, really bad for sustainability. Other countries that are also capitalist seem to manage to do just fine. So what we currently have right now, we don't really have the tech for fusion. We do have the tech for fission, right?
Yeah.
Fission doesn't have any of like the major downsides that like coal plants do, for example. We could sustainably go to fission for a very, very long time. We couldn't do 235 for a long time, right? But we can do like 239 reactors for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I think that in the future we should use a combination of energy sources. We should be using not just like fission. I mean, fission until we get to fusion, but we only have so much uranium on the planet, and it's very it leaves a carbon footprint in and of itself to harvest that uranium because it's so scarce. I think we should.
Yes, no, this is for 235 is scarce. 230 uranium as a whole is like very, very, very abundant. So uranium 235 in particular is like I think it's either 1 or 2% of all the uranium we have. Uranium as a whole is like we have a shitload of it. We just don't have much 235. The issue is once we use 235, what we get out of that reaction is I believe it's the neutrons of the 235 will hit the uranium 238, which we use to like dilute it, right? In the reactors, and that gives us plutonium, which we can then use in what's called like a thorium reactor, which is like the thorium and plutonium 239.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask a bit of a personal question, but are you in college?
No.
Yeah, no. You sound like a college student to me. Like you're very educated. You've touched up on a couple things I didn't even know about. I don't know if you were in school for philosophy or if you just do this shit because you're a passionate scholar. And
it's just passion.
I got you.
What I do is I work in freelance game development. I've been doing that for a while now. I never did college.
Based, fucking great. Great.
It is a fun job.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to develop video games, man. I've had ideas for video games since I was a kid, but man, I need to go back to school. I need to pick up programming like seriously. But
programming is a really good way to get into it. Another thing that you could do. So there is like what I've noticed is there's like an overabundance of programmers. So if you want to get into game development and you want to have like a lot of control over like where it goes, you could get into the art field and you'd have like a huge amount of sway when it comes to like finding programmers and like telling them like here's my ideas. They'll trust a huge amount of what you say, right? If you like get into like 3D modeling or something.
Yeah.
So if you have like game ideas that you want to like really make very like personalized to your idea, and you want to have like a vision, right?
Yeah.
Art is probably the best direction to go. Programming is easily an option, but it's like not it's not optimal.
Right. But man, we are way down the rabbit hole off topic. I mean, what was even the original topic again? Like we were talking about ecology, and you were talking about sustainability. Yeah, sustainability. So I've read into it, and in all honesty, like, do you know that we're in the middle of a mass extinction event right now?
Yep.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a mass extinction event, and it's primarily driven by human industrial economic activities, like the way. Yeah.
So it depends on how you define industrial. One of the biggest, or not one of, the biggest methane producer is animal agriculture, right? So obviously we use like a very, very modernized farming system, but the methane itself comes from the sheer number of animals we have, right?
All the pig farts. Yeah, the pig farts and cow poop and all that.
Yeah, no, genuinely, it's like, this is absurd that we have so many that the farts of these animals are able to have a major factor in destroying the planet we live on, right?
Oh yeah.
And they're animals that, like, most of these animals would not be able to exist in nature. These are animals that, like, we've bred to be these freaks of nature.
Yeah, meat machines.
Like, awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And they live miserable lives. They suffer throughout the entirety of their lives. And yeah.
Oh yeah. No, we're running like 100 holocausts worth of death, like, annually all across the world in the meat industry. It's disgusting, dude.
Yeah. So I don't think the life of an animal is equivalent to the life of a human. But even if you don't think that, it's like, if you care about human lives, I think the anthropocentric arguments against meat production are the strongest.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to hurt humans, right?
Yeah,
The methane that these cows are bringing into the air, like the cows and the pigs are bringing into the air, is they're going to like turn into increases in global temperature that then cut soybean production in the third world. Now people over there are like starving to death, right?
Right.
So it's like, this is like the strongest argument there, I think.
Yeah. Are you familiar with like in vitro meat or like lab grown meat at all? Like that project?
I'm not super familiar with lab grown meat, but what I think is like really, really good, if like somebody wants to like cut red meat in their diet entirely, which I'd absolutely recommend, it's a great thing to do. The Beyond Burgers are really good. They're so good. And they're all plant based, right?
Are you vegan?
Oh no, I eat chicken still.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, it's crazy. I mean, they've come a long way and made some serious breakthroughs in terms of like cultured meat in a petri dish. Like, hypothetically, you don't even have to kill any animals. All you got to do is extract like a tiny bit of protein from their muscle cells, and you can reproduce like endless amounts of meat just by growing it in a petri dish with like a fraction of the energy and the resources and environmental impact. Like, you got to think how many acres of land we dedicate just to cattle feed. You know, we could cut that down to like 5% of what it is now and still be able to like grow and produce meat, you know. But we don't do it because, I mean, it's relatively new, but the other reason why is because like you've got like the meat industry that's like actively blocking it. Like, they're actively like lobbying against in vitro meat hitting the market. Isn't that crazy?
It is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it's like the same reason why, like, if fusion becomes a thing, it's going to be the energy industry's worst nightmare. Like, that kind of abundance. Are you kidding me?
Here's the wild thing. I actually think if we get fusion, they won't have a problem with it because of the current issue with fission. It's not the matter of like fission is way better like long term. Like, if you talk about like 50 years down the line, right? Like the return on investment for building a fission plant is so much better than a coal plant. But investors don't want to do that, right? Because the thing is, like, it's better long down the line. But if the coal plant is better over like 2 years, if you build this thing in 2 years and you're like making money back, right?
Right.
And that means like you can then build more coal plants, and you can build even more. Like, now you build like 2, and then you can build 4, and you can build 8, right? You're building a lot of coal plants really fast because of how fast the ROI is on a coal plant, right? But a nuclear power plant, like to build a good one, even like a pressurized water reactor, right? Like, these are still like 10-year build cycles. This is like a ridiculously long time.
Yeah.
And then you have to take even more time to make your money back, and then you can start building another one, right?
Yeah.
So like, it is so much better for for humans as a whole, but because of the short term thinking nature of capitalism, it's just sort of not an option, really.
Yeah.
You have to have government subsidization to build nuclear.
Oh.
What I think France does and what they're able to do so well.
You would basically need the government to come in and save the ruling class from their own stupidity for like what?
No, exactly.
The 15th. It's like the 15th, 16th time in history that's happened. Ruling class, all they care about is their short-term profits, and the government has to come in and save their fucking asses. Yeah, but in all honesty, when it comes to nuclear, the main problem with nuclear, I mean, aside from like the uranium, is really just what are you going to do with the waste? You just have to bury it in a hole, wouldn't you? Like a real deep hole underground.
Depends on which kind of nuclear waste you're using. So for 235 reactors, you do just have to bury it, and I believe the half-life on the byproduct of that is very, 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 very long.
Right.
So that means like you bury it deep underground, you don't have to deal with it anymore, right? But it's like there's the chance of somebody like a couple thousand years in the future fucking with it, and like they get themselves killed, right?
Right.
Which is like, this isn't a huge risk factor compared to like even like the downsides of like hydroelectric or something, right? Which is like it can fuck with the water levels in an area and like make the methane emissions fuck around, right? And like you boost the methane emissions a little bit, and that can have a sort of greenhouse gas effect too, because it is still methane. But the overall issue with like nuclear of like the waste is like it's not the worst one in the world, and it's also like I believe, if I remember correctly, it's even better with the thorium reactors, with the plutonium reactors, right?
I hear thorium reactors. The technology's not quite there yet. Like I'm not really sure. Like are they viable yet? I'm not.
Yes.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they're very viable. The issues, we don't have them yet, right? I mean, it's like that's the same issue we have with the 235 reactors. We don't have them yet.
Oh, I got you.
Right?
Yeah, no.
And then you have to compete with coal plants, which once again, it's like this doesn't take a long time to build. You like build this in a week, and who cares?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things. I mean, here I go bringing up the USSR again. But if that was one nice thing about the Soviets, is that they were down to like go through with government projects like that, like building power plants and space stations and running water pipes into the Ural Sea to make sure they don't drink it dry. Like they were willing to do shit like that. And it'd be so cool if we had a government that was willing to do that was willing to like do those projects where for long-term stability, short-term sacrifice, but in the long term, we're all going to be way wealthier and better off for it. But we don't do it just because of the short-sighted stupidity of our current economic mode. It's ridiculous.
So this is true, but we have existing examples of other countries where like we mentioned earlier, like
the
ruling class there does make it does make the decision.
Yeah.
To, like dump huge amounts of money into like energy infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean China's doing a lot of cool stuff right now, like with their railroads.
Yeah, exactly. China, which is like we both agree, they're under the capitalist mode of production, and they're still able to do they're still able to dump a lot into infrastructure that is able to benefit the country overall. They're
socialist with Chinese characteristics. They're not capitalist. Remember that.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chinese characteristic is capitalism, unfortunately. It's unfortunate that like the biggest existing example we still have of a country that does openly say it like has socialist goals is China, because they don't seem as laser focused on it as we want. Right?
China is a hardcore social democracy at best.
Yeah, exactly.
That's about what they are. I mean, so like when COVID happens and you have scientists that are trying to warn local state officials about this really nasty virus, and they just shut down dissent and like basically silence the scientists and have them jailed. And then you have this disease that spreads like wildfire everywhere. And then all of a sudden the red social democrats from the main CCP come in to rein things in and shut down the economy for a couple days,
Yeah, no, exactly. So I guess like overall, we could talk about the USSR's nuclear in particular. The issue with this is like
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl was the obvious example, right?
Yeah.
They did put money into it, but when you're building pressurized water reactors, if you rush, you hurt yourself really bad, right?
Oh yeah.
This isn't like obviously like, there weren't a lot of nuclear reactors. They couldn't point to like a real world example, but this wasn't like something that people didn't know, right? Like people understood the way that like a pressurized water reactor as opposed to like a liquid metal reactor works is one that is more likely to have these huge disasters, and that means you have to build these slowly over time. Right?
Can you send me some resources on nuclear? Because I actually want to read about this.
Oh yeah, I'll at some point I'll compile my like a research document for nuclear and like jump it on you.
Yeah, sweet. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. One of the biggest things I want to mention about nuclear, when it comes to specifically like uranium-235 reactors, which are like the most common type, these have a tremendous amount of problems. Biggest one to really hyper focus on if you want to like pull people over towards like wanting to do more funding for for things like battery tech for solar, right?
Right.
The one thing to really push hard on is the fact that if you have one of these, if you have a 235 reactor, you immediately increase the chance of nuclear proliferation to an unreasonable degree anywhere on Earth, right? Like if you're having one of these, you made a machine that generates weapons grade plutonium.
Oh, yeah, right? You got a boom right there. Are you? What do you think of geothermal?
I think geothermal is conceptually very cool. Like I really like the idea of most forms of energy are really they're just roundabout solar. If you think about it, like even coal, it's like at one point it was like a plant, right? And then it smashed flat. So everything usually goes back to solar with the exception of geothermal. Geothermal is like the way to trace that back to the sun is really tenuous, right? Geothermal is like you're powering things off the earth, which is really cool, and it makes the earth feel more like it's compartmentalized as this one unit that's really safe for long term. But I think it's probably the best idea is not to really dump too much into it and dump most of the funding into battery tech for solar panels. Solar panels are efficiency-wise, those are really good. They only work for half the time.
Yeah, no, the main issue right now is more energy storage than anything else because
exactly.
there is a carbon footprint that goes into manufacturing any sort of battery or even recycling them. One thing that I don't understand is why all the talk about lithium. We have other earth metals that we could use, like sodium and potassium. They're a part of the same column on the periodic table, so you should be able to substitute lithium for like sodium or potassium ion, can't you? So I don't know why we don't go with that rather than just lithium.
So there are other forms of battery tech that use different chemical reactions than just lithium ion. The crazy thing about battery tech though is if you want new battery tech, it's really hard to get it in the private sector. It's the kind of thing that comes from usually government R&D, right?
Right.
The one example that pops to mind, not as an example of it not coming from the private sector, but an example of why it's so hard in the private sector. Sony has had to develop their own batteries. They had to start up battery manufacturing processes to have it for portable devices because of the fact that existing battery companies didn't want to take the risk of making new types of batteries, right?
Right.
If you're the battery company around, what do you, nobody else is going to do this either. It's a ridiculous risk to take, right? So there's no motivation to actually compel you to make the new types of battery when you find out that that there are more ways that you could do things more efficiently.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. There are honestly a lot of ways in which the current mode of production actually does kind of stifle innovation in some regards because there's not really a lot of it comes down to political will, but also economic motives. Are you familiar with planned or intrinsic obsolescence at all? What do you know of planned obsolescence?
Oh, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, it's bullshit, isn't it?
It sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really sucks that people are instead of innovating things that would make the world a better place, they're innovating ways that they can siphon out as much money from people as possible.
Yeah.
Turning your devices into a fashion, a fashion statement is a really good way to do that. And making it trash every couple of years, you throw in an OS update or something, and now the whole thing is busted.
Dude,
this is ridiculous.
Do you know what Apple does? Apple strategizes like there's this website called iFixit. And they've exposed how Apple is notorious for making it really difficult or outright impossible to repair the older models of their phones and their MP3 players.
Do you know what right to repair laws are?
No, but they sound based.
Oh, so right to repair laws. Yeah, it's so the idea is
Apple is, or is it right to work? If it's right to work, then it's cringe.
So the way that right to repair laws work is probably, if I remember correctly, it's the way that it's the cringe kind, right?
Oh yeah, fuck that, gross.
Oh no, it's the base kind. Okay. So the idea is a lot of the time you will get if you're a small repair shop who does repairs on your devices or does repairs on other people's devices, right? You can get hit with pressured really hard with IP law and stuff by these larger corporations because of the fact that they'll say you're violating their intellectual property by violating the end user license agreement or something along those lines, right? When you repair this device, you're not supposed to, you're not allowed to, you're not authorized to do this. Right to repair laws allow these smaller businesses, right? A lot of the time they have the ability to be just 3 people or mom and pop, right? Doing who are doing repairs on people's iPhones it gives these smaller businesses the ability to not have to worry about these larger corporations putting that same kind of pressure on them. But the issue is like they're still like these larger corporations are still allowed to do things like make magic security screws that have like an odd number of bits or something, right? Like you have to have like the special Apple bit to fucking unscrew it, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They glue the edge shut as opposed to screwing it shut.
Or how about that bullshit where in order to swap the screens on your phone, there's one company that has the exact shape of the screen that you need for like all these phones, and they charge you like $100 for a little fucking glass screen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so this is overall an issue. But even within like the existing mode of production, we do see examples where like the fundamental nature of like planned obsolescence is sort of like undermined, right? Like we see like the GNU/Linux project in operating systems, right? Or we see like Google's work on operating systems as well. Like Google's like mega corporation, so they're probably evil, but despite this, they managed to do a lot for like the open source community.
Oh yeah.
This is huge in undermining like planned obsolescence.
Oh yeah, I know, it's great. It's wonderful. This is something that now I want to kind of like change topics just slightly because it's kind of related. Actually, it is related. How social phenomenon will emerge that plant the seeds for the new social order while undermining the current one. You saw something like this actually during the French Revolution. I don't know how deeply you've studied it, but it is a fascinating topic to me.
Are we talking about the Jacobin French Revolution?
Yeah, the Jacobin French Revolution with Bonaparte and Robespierre and such. No, it's just very interesting to me because there was a lot of social instability, and it was King Louis who basically set up the institutions and set the stage and planted the seeds for the social institutions that would arise, that would be basically the downfall. It would lead to the downfall of the ancient regime and, the establishment of the new French government and, and the contradictions within that led to the rise of Bonaparte. But it's just very interesting to me how within a current social order, like how the contradictions will build up and it'll eventually lead to the seeds being planted. Like, because if you think about it, if we were to switch to a socialist mode of production, could you imagine like how much more free we would be, like how much better off everyone would be? It would be ridiculously freaking awesome,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like,
yeah, if we could just move society like closer towards it, the gains are immediately massive, right? Like even if we just make it so like there's like some small sector of the economy is now like a force to be reckoned with and is like democratically controlled, or like we have like an expansion of like even if it's just an expansion of the existing government's power over the economy. Like both of these things could be massive and making lives for working class people better. Even if it is like a country that's like wildly controlled by lobbyists, it would still like the fact that they're like now unified is I think massive. The fact that they can like have some kind of democratic say over some sector of the economy, I think would be huge.
Oh yeah, no, it would absolutely be huge. But yeah, even within the context of like a social democracy, I'm like, I think it's possible for America to become like a social democracy, but it's going to take a new labor movement. Like it's going to take the emergence of the labor movement, the likes of which you saw emerge during the 1930s before the election of Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Before Roosevelt subsequently like killed the movement. By giving them dumb concessions they should have taken.
Yeah, no, exactly. There were like literally 1 million card-carrying communists in the United States by the year 1933, and this was at a time, mind you, where we had a third the population that we do now. So that'd be like if we had 3 million card-carrying communists in America at this present time. That's insane, And there was a lot of potential. Like, dude, it's crazy because I don't like to think too much about alternate history and what could have been, but there was a couple of points where the trajectory of this country could have gone in such a different direction, such a better direction. Like seriously.
But we always have like the chance to like fix the issues now.
Yeah. I mean, what matters is the work that we do today and what we do now. So, I mean, in all honesty, I think I'm going to rename this stream like a pleasant conversation with Sinthe, because you can't exactly call this a debate, because I ended up agreeing with you in a lot more stuff than I thought I would. Yeah, no, I'm glad this didn't turn into another shit show. But
I've had conversations with Bosch in the past. I was talking to, like, while you were using or grabbing water. I was talking to Chad about it. Like, the thing with Bosch is he's a tricky guy to handle, right? So I understand why it was like it was easy to like have him throw you off guard with like some of the jabs, right?
Yeah, my mistake was not talking about the economy from the get-go. Like because he loses his mind whenever the topic of the Soviets comes up. Like for some reason he just has an amygdala hijack and he just loses it. So my mistake was bringing that up rather than just talking about the fucking co-ops. Like that was my number one. The second one was the Joker laugh, but that was dumb on my part, because all he could use that to basically, reaffirm his, lunatic tanky narrative that he gets going,
Yeah, the thing about, like, I think for most people they view politics in a way where like they have certain things they like extrapolate out to be like huge expectations for how the other person's going to think, right? Like they'll take one piece of information the person gave them and assume a lot about them and characterize them like in their head, right? Like you're this kind of guy, you're the tanky kind of guy, right? And I think the issue, like you see it a lot with the people who are like really hardline trying to like fight against like the class reductionist on Twitter or whatever. They'll see somebody say something that sounds like vaguely like not that sounds like even vaguely like class focused, and they flip out. They assume that you're some kind of like wacky transphobe or something, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm getting.
But that's just how people's brains work, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think it's fixable.
I'm getting some flack. I'm a market socialist now. No, I'm not. And now I'm getting flack because people are like, "Why get back to the debate? Get back to dude. Like, can't we just have a conversation?" Like, I'm sorry.
Whatever happened to left unity, right?
Yeah, no. Like I'm sorry. The conversation ended up turning friendly. Like, my bad. Holy crap. Tell you what. I'm gonna bring up one issue that we might actually have some contingency on. But first, let me shut my room door because the wind blew it open. So we are heading at a very critical point with the ecological crisis and climate change and so on, where basically here's a study that I want to show you. Here we go. Basically, it's a UN report that says that like virtually no industry on Earth, once you force them to account for the externalities, like the cost to run these industries, the cost for them to basically turn a profit in order to secure market share. If you were to force them to account for the negative externalities that they shift onto the environment and take care of the ecological debt, then none of these industries would be turning a profit. They'd either be operating on a loss or breaking even, Yeah. And these are major industries. I'm talking the meat industry, like coal, energy production, cements, iron, like heavy industry that we depend on for a lot of different stuff. I
think a few of these, the issue is the fact that we depend on these at all. Like these are things that don't have to exist. They're not things that we necessarily need. I think that when you talk about things like cement and iron, right? These are things that we will probably need long into the future. But the thing is, like, if we can get rid of like the huge environmental downsides of the larger handfuls, which are like the primary sources, like obviously animal agriculture and animal agriculture industry and animal agriculture, energy and transportation. If we can get rid of those big three ones, or like get rid of the massive downsides of those big three ones, or replace them with like the alternatives, which we do have, right? We have like plant-based ways to eat. We have energy sources that are renewable. And we have we have the ability to move towards like transportation systems that use those renewable energy sources.
So
we have the tech. We have to have some kind of sort of like a large cultural movement which can push people towards voting for politicians who are like really, really, really hyper fixated on like the environment.
Well, Well, what we really need, and from my position, is we need like a genuine revolutionary movement. We need a radical change in the social relations to the way our economy operates. One way or another, from my position, we are going to have to shift towards an economy that is a steady state economy. Now, what does that mean? It means zero growth. It means an economy where rather than trying to exploit the environment and profit off of it, you have to give back to it in order to sustain it and reproduce the environment, because we can harvest resources so much faster than what our ecology can reproduce. So we need to balance that with our production. And by doing so, you would basically be driving profit rates down to nil, which means the days of profitability are coming to an end. So in a post-fossil fuel green energy world, it concludes that we're going to need a steady state economy with zero growth, centered around meeting need rather than just trying to sell commodities to people.
So there are two things I want to talk about here. One is the growth one, and the other one is I want to talk about, like, you mentioned we need a revolutionary movement. When you say revolutionary, do you mean that in like the colloquial sense, or do you mean that in the sense of like we need like an armed proletariat who are ready to like rise up and like seize power?
Well, that's definitely an important component to it. We do need people that are militant, but we aren't at militant class struggle yet. Right now, we don't even have a trade union movement, dude. We don't even know how to crawl yet, dude. We've got a lot of work to do before we get to that point. But in general, yeah, in the long term, I think militant labor needs to make a comeback.
So I think the issue with militant labor is we're probably not going to be I don't think that we will ever have a feasible chance at this because of the fact that like the existing downsides on the working class of the existing like firearm ownership, unless we can get like a blanket handgun ban so that like working class people aren't killing each other, then we're never going to be able to use those big rifles to ever like storm the government, right, and take things over, because we're too busy killing each other to ever like do anything with force. We see.
But a lot of that, don't you think a lot of that is like social, just social, and a lot of it just comes down to like you got to take care of like the gang violence and the will. I think a lot of it just comes down to mustering political will to do it.
Even if you control for factors like gang violence, you still see that people who are like disproportionately not likely to be involved in gang violence, like middle class 45-year-old guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a group that's still like really, really disproportionately likely to like take a handgun and kill themselves with it, right? And like even if you're not killing each other, you're still like using this thing to kill yourself. They use this like despite the fact that even if you control for like ownership rates, right, of like handguns versus rifles, you still see handguns are wildly disproportionately used in suicides because of how easy it is to take a handgun and put it in your mouth and pull the trigger, right? Doing that with a rifle is like clumsy and it's hard, and you may as well just go hang yourself. It's way easier to do the other thing. Right?
Yeah, but my main thing here is I'm more concerned about the wants, like the desire for people to either kill each other or kill themselves that I'm more interested in addressing. Sure, you could probably address or curtail suicide rates by doing that, but I feel like if there was like some sort of systemic social programs or like awareness campaigns to try and address like the social alienation that drives people to suicide in the first place, I feel like that would just be a more effective policy to strive towards. And the other thing is, I'm not giving up my Glock. That's the other thing.
Yeah, well, I get it. I also want a Glock, but I would be willing to give it up if it meant like saving a bunch of working class lives. And I would think it would be an easy thing to do if we could manage to get people on board with like, trading in their Glock for a rifle. I think one of these is a lot more important than any like actual revolutionary movement. If that's your end goal, we got to get rid of the guns. We got to get rid of the handguns and start giving people rifles.
As long as I get an AK, I want a Kalashnikov.
No, you want the Kalashnikov?
Yeah, I want me a Kalashnikov. I'm up about that 7.62 Full Metal Jacket, boy.
Do you want the 1947 or the 1974?
No, 1947, bro.
Okay, classic.
Yeah, classic Kalashnikov. So.
Yeah, if we could, talking practically though, if we could get handguns banned and get the left to start focusing its energy on that and redirect it away from rifles, like towards the thing that like would actually like save lives, I think that would be, even if you do want like a revolution, that's your end goal. This is like an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's to make sure that more people are alive and more people have guns that are like revolutionarily capable, as opposed to a handgun, which is like sure, you could like use it for like an assassination attempt or something, right? But you could also like build a zip gun at Home Depot for $20, do it the same way.
Zip gun, that sounds pretty cool. I've never heard of that before.
It means like a tiny mouse caliber gun, right?
Oh, I got you.
Think of like a pipe, like a little pipe gun, like a little pin gun or something, right?
Got you.
Yeah.
All right. So I do want to kind of bring things to a close because my back is getting very sweaty, and I mean, we pretty much ran through everything I wanted to talk about. The one thing I did want to stress was like the no growth thing, like in the grand scheme of things. And when I say no growth, people might get misconceptions about that. I'm not saying that it's not about getting more of X. It's about taking what you have of X and stretching it further out to fulfill more use values. Does that make sense?
So I think if this is what you mean by no growth, it might be good to find a different form of rhetoric to like encapsulate.
Yeah. I mean,
when people hear no growth, the average person is going to think no progress, right? I know that's not what you want.
Yeah, no. Well, the reason why I use that terminology is it's within the context of like capitalist, like bourgeois economics, like because capitalism, when it thinks of growth, it thinks of GDP. Our GDP going up is a good thing in capitalism, but just because we're spending money doesn't make it a good thing. Like our GDP goes up during a hurricane, it goes up during a war. GDP going up is not correlated with like people's happiness or well-being, you know?
Yeah. So I understand what you mean. That's like, this is not the problem. The problem is the rhetoric you're using to package it is what's going to turn people away and not bring people in. Well, okay, right?
Yeah, fair enough. So what would be a better word besides no growth?
So if we think about like what's the actual thing that you want to stop, it's just sustainability. Right?
Yeah. So a steady state economy. I think that's a better term.
Yeah, steady state economy is a really, really great way to package it.
Yeah.
A sustainable economy, steady state economy, like a long-term focused economy. All of these are really good ways to package it. If you say something like no growth, even though this might like under like an economic context, if this really communicates the idea super effectively and super densely, it still makes it the case that the average person, when they hear this, is going to be pushed away by your ideas because of the fact that this is the kind of thing that most people are going to have like an emotional reaction to, right?
Yeah.
They think no growth, and they think like, okay, no more technological progress. Like, that's not what you want. You want more tech. You want more people working on more things and stacking the labor of the past with like the labor of the now, right?
The dead
things more and more.
The dead labor with the living labor, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Like I said, some people aren't too happy that this didn't turn into a full-on debate. I mean, it's hard to debate with someone when you don't really disagree with them on much. Like, in all honesty, I mean.
Well, we're both. There are things we disagree on, obviously, but we're both leftists, right?
Yeah,
we're both fighting toward like the same goal.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of a conversation I was having last night about. It was kind of a left unity type moment. I was thinking, what if we made peace with BreadTube? And we were talking about it, and it could be done with certain BreadTubers, but then other ones are just going to stonewall us no matter what. So. I mean, I don't know. I consider it like it's nothing personal, but I considered you to be BreadTube when I first heard of you. To be honest, like you're part of that sphere of the internet.
Oh, am I big enough to be considered BreadTube?
I mean, you're a little BreadTube. You're like a slice of BreadTube.
Slice of BreadTube.
Yeah, like a little slice. You're not the full loaf, just a little slice. You only got 300 subs, but hey, guys, Sinthe has a channel if you want to check that out.
Yeah, I'm at youtube.com/SINTHE.
Yeah. So, if you'd like, I run a podcast from time to time called Chaos Under Heaven. If you'd like to come on, because we shoot the shit about political events, about politics, economics, current events from just like a left-wing perspective. If you'd like to come on sometime, you're more than welcome to, dude.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. No, but this has actually been a very pleasant conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Because I'm ready to close.
That sounds good. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too, bud.
All right, peace.
Peace. Yeah, destruction with faction logic. Did you like that shit? Who? No, I'm sorry it wasn't. I did turned it into a friendly conversation, guys. Like legit. Here, let me show you the document that I wrote. Like I legit thought he was going to be more of a free marketeer. Like he was really going to be more, but he sounds like he's into planned economy. I think what he thinks he means by market socialism is you have a planned economy with a market, which there's always going to be a market as long as there is some sort of exchange going on. Whenever you have commodities, whenever you have things being brought to an area to be exchanged, there's going to be a market. There will never not be a market. But if he's on board with having a planned economy where profits are not in command and it's designed from the bottom up to be sustainable and democratic, then we're on the same team. He's not an enemy. He's a comrade. You know, all we need to do is get him to start reading Marx, then he'll be golden. Because apparently, like, he's just a self-proclaimed Owenite. That's the only thing I think kind of silly. Imagine being an Owenite in the 20. Imagine being like a utopian in the 21st century. Nothing wrong with it. I think he's a good guy. Definitely a good guy. So yeah, here were the points where I was going to bring up, where I was talking about generalized commodity production being the main defining thing between capitalism and socialism, and not just private ownership. And I was going to have a little Marxist literature discussing that. Point 2 is there's still markets. Basically, there's still income inequality, and that's when I was talking about the Gibbs-Boltzmann distribution and Yakovenko's article about the mechanics of money and econophysics. We were going to get through that, and I brought up the various types of ways that co-ops can exploit one another and still extract surplus value. And then I was going to bring up the Mondragon Corporation as a golden example of that in practice. And then we were going to talk about cooperative ownership does nothing inherently to address the contradictions from unemployment. But the thing is, he knows about the contradictions. He knows about the issues with capitalism, and he believes that they can be addressed. And he believes that they can be addressed, of course. But, you know, like I said, if he's on board with a planned economy where profits are no longer in command, he just wants a democratic ownership of the workplace, I mean, then we're basically on the same team. There's really no reason to fight. I mean, we already talked about the ecological question, and then I was going to go to describe like what I meant by planned economy. And this document I didn't complete. I spent most of the day working on this. But if you guys want a copy of the document, I'm going to go ahead and link a copy of the document in the Discord, and you guys can check that out if you want. But for now, I'm going to go lift weights. But before I do that, I'm going to answer a couple questions. Yeah, fuck you. He wants selective decommodification. If I remember correctly, is his end goal. Would be around 6 months, he said that, though. Oh, okay. Hello, fellow third worldist. Hello, fellow third worldist. 22nd century robot Stalin makes 5-year plans for every second of everyone's life. Based. Oh, hell yeah. Jason Unruh's response was, oh yeah, I saw it. It was pretty lit. Very, very, very sweet response on the part of Unruh. You cannot undo the Unruh. One thing I did kind of disagree with, and I would still have to think more about it. I just think it's kind of weird that he wants to ban handguns, you know. But it is an interesting compromise. I'm not gonna lie. Like the desire for the handgun ban. No bread tube alliance. Let's see what else we got here. Stop with the renewable delusion. I don't know what you mean by that. But okay. Oh, Jason Unruh's here. What's up, Jason? What's up? Of course he didn't. Why would he post the debate? It made him look like shit. He made himself. I didn't even make him look like shit. He made himself look like shit with the way he conducted himself towards me, you know? He did that to him. He did that to him fucking self, dude. Yeah, we all agree. Man bun man bad. I don't want to talk about man bun man. I'm done talking about man bun man. God damn it. Yeah, say it with me, comrades. Under no pretext. Under no pretext, comrades. Yeah, no, Jews-me's. Thanks for hooking us up. This guy right here hooked us up with the conversation. I'm probably going to end up retitling this stream later to something along the lines of a friendly conversation with Sinthe, because this honestly didn't really even turn into a debate. Like, I'm surprised we agreed on as much stuff as we did. I was thinking I was going to be talking to a very bourgeois, liberal type person. I wanted to ask him about his cost of production theory of value. He talks about, because it's supposed to be like an alternative to the LTV, where, hold on. Yeah, no, cost of production theory of value. All right, cost of production is the theory that the price of an object or condition is determined by the sum of the cost of the resources that went into making it. But then, like, when you consider what it takes to mine the resources and the labor that creates all the tools and gets the resources out of the ground and make the tools, it just sounds like the labor theory of value. Like, really, in all honesty. Ban all American guns. Force people to use superior... Yes, I agree. Get them Kalashnikovs around. Fuck yeah. Ponytail is superior to the man bun. Hold on. Environmental delusion. Implementing on large scale of this environmental project is just a huge... Well, yeah, it's going to take an ungodly amount of investment, and that's why I say zero growth. We're going to have to rethink the way we do economy. Zero growth, or in other words, a steady state economy, all right? We're going to have to give back to the environment what we take, because it's the only one that we have. That I emphasize the hell out of eco-socialism for that reason. And I think it's about time, now that I have my enlarged, vitalized audience, that I want to start talking about that. Will you embrace Gonzalo thought? No. Dude, Chad and Sinthe, Jason said he was against all gun. Yeah, because Jason is right. No, it didn't, because I remember when I went into a server with Leftism Today with Simmons, dude, Simmons was out for blood. Like, it immediately turned into like this rapid, high touch, like fast conversation, Destiny style debate. Like, dude, Sinthe was fucking slinging smack, and then Simmons was slinging slack, and they were just talking shit to one another. But it was funny because every time I would butt in and talk to him, he would calm down and he would become very reasonable. But then when Leftism Today started talking to him again, he started to get really, really angry, and it was pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm a man of peace. I'm a man of building bridges. I'm very much a world builder, guys. So you guys are world builders. I'm a world builder. Let's build some worlds. But anyways, I'm going to kill this stream. My ass is sweaty and I want to go lift weights. So